Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about the experiment extraction part 2, which is the separation of acidic, basic, and neutral components in an unknown. In extraction part 1, we separate a substance out of a mixture by taking the advantage of different solubilities of a substance. Uh, but however, in part 2, we modify the concept a little bit. We um, we control the solubility. Uh, what I mean by this is that if you have an organic acid that is not insoluble, that is not soluble in a water layer, you can make it soluble by neutralize it with a base such as sodium hydroxide, and I will explain this more in detail in the next slide. This flowchart is an overview of how acid, base, and neutral compounds were separated. The students started off with acid, base, and neutral dissolved in ether, as you can see here, and um, uh, then he separated the base from acid and neutral by adding 5% hydrogen chloride to the ether layer. Then the base will react with the acid and form an ionic salt, which is soluble in water. Because water and ether are immiscible, now there are two separate layers in the tube: ether layer and water. So now I will explain how base was separated. Now we have uh, ether and water layer. So for the water layer, we will add 10% nitrogen hydroxide, because nitrogen hydroxide is a strong base. It will pull protons away from the water layer that contains the organic base. So the organic base will lose proton and it will become um, insoluble in water again. So we have basic precipitate here, and I will explain what to do with the ether layer next. So now for the new ether layer that contain acid and neutral, I did pretty much the same thing as I did with the ether layer at the beginning. So but instead of adding um, hydrogen chloride, I added sodium hydroxide in order to neutralize the acid. So now we have two new layers: ether layer that contain only neutral, and so now the water layer contains an ionic salt that is the result of the neutralization of acid over here. Now 10% hydrochloric acid is added to the water layer uh, so that it protonates the ionic salt to reform the acid and causes the acid to be insoluble in water and precipitate. And this is the picture of my acidic component. Because acid and base uh, were already separated, now I'm left with the neutral compound. So in the previous slides, we know that uh, ether that contain neutral and water layer that contain uh, the ionic salt were separated. Now I have an ether layer that contain only neutral. So all we have to do now is to evaporate the ether to obtain the neutral precipitate. However, we need to remember that most extraction in the organic lab involve water and inorganic solvent. Many organic compounds are partially soluble in both solvents. So in order to extract the neutral compound, we need to wash the the ether layer with an with a saturated salt to remove the dissolved water into the aqueous phase. One thing we need to remember is that only after we wash the ether layer with a saturated salt such as sodium sulfate, we evaporate the ether layer to obtain the neutral compound. For my unknown 66, I was able to obtain two compounds which are fluorine and benzoic acid by measuring their melting points and comparing them to the melting points reference table. Uh, I was able to correctly identify the fluorine. However, for my benzoic acid, it was not correct. The actual compound was tranexamic acid. One mistake that I made in this experiment was when I did the extraction of acidic component. When I was drawing off the ether layer, I by accident I took out some of the water layer that contained base. So when I measured the melting points for my acid, it was way off. That is why I got the acid wrong. Another mistake that I made was when I was doing the extraction of the acidic component. Instead of doing multiple extraction, I did a simple extraction. That is why I have a low percentage. One unavoidable mistake that I did in this lab was when I was using the pipette to agitate to mix the aqueous HCl and the ether layer together. Uh, some of the acidic precipitate got stuck in the pipette and I could not get it out. So some of the solid was lost, and that made my percent recovery lower than I should have had. Thank you for watching and have a good day.